Is it possible to play a game wrongly? My answer is yes. Yes, you can. I'm here to explain why. As some of you might have noticed, this week I started playing Dark Souls on stream over at Twitch. I did it Thursday for 3 hours, about 3 hours, but it wasn't my first introduction to the series. Before I started the game on camera, I had played for about 15 hours before, and just to get accustomed to the game and see if I liked it or not. And I've come to the conclusion that Dark Souls is probably one of the most refreshing and just amazing games that I've ever played, even though it doesn't actually cater to my traditional role-playing sort of games that I really like. That said, the reason why I started playing Dark Souls and why I even bothered giving the series a try was a video that I watched a few months ago by a guy called HBomberGuy, and I got a link for you up there if you want to check it out. The video is called Bloodborne is Genius, and here's why. In that video, HBomberGuy argues that Bloodborne is very good at introducing people, new players, to the Souls series. Bloodborne is not actually a Souls game. Well, you know, it's a Blood Souls game or Born Souls game. I don't really know how they. It's all in the same. It's all in the same sort of genre, developed by the same people, From Software. And he argues in the video that by forcing the player to approach combat in a two-handed manner, and it's a fairly complex argument, so I'll let you check out the video if you want to check it out in detail. But basically, the crux of his argument, at least the argument that that made me want to play Dark Souls, was that Bloodborne forces you to play with two hands or dodging, not without a shield. More importantly than anything, without a shield. And when I started Dark Souls, I was actually surprised because I didn't know. I was actually surprised to see that all of the classes that you can choose in that game have a shield on the character, on the class selection screen, and I was really surprised because of that. Now, Dark Souls is a very complex game, and in many regards, in others it is actually quite simple. But one of the things that it really forces you to do is to know how to adapt to the environment and how to adapt to the challenges. Now, having a shield, and as HBomberGuy points out, having a shield is an easy way to, you know, shield yourself from damage. You can dodge, you can parry, you can just step back and not be in the enemy's sort of line of attack. For those of you that know Dark Souls, I think that's about that, but you feel free to correct me down below if there are other ways to avoid damage. Now, the thing about using a shield, and the point of this whole video, is that HBomberGuy thinks that using a shield for everything, and he goes to great lengths to explain why he feels what he feels about the shield, using a shield for everything is the wrong way to play Dark Souls. He feels that it's boring. So, for me, that kind of sparked a little bit of a discussion within myself. Is it actually possible to play a game wrong? He actually asks this question, but he doesn't answer it in the video as far as I can tell. And it also sparked a little bit of a discussion in the comment section. So his point is that if you use a shield, if you follow what Dark Souls actually teaches you with its interface, because it shows you the characters, it shows the classes with shields, and it actually outright tells you to pick a shield, to get your shield right at the beginning of the game, to avoid taking damage. If you use a shield, you're playing the game wrong. You're playing the game in a way that's not going to be as fun. Now, a counter-argument, I think a common counter-argument for this is that if you're using a shield and having fun, you're not playing the game wrong. It's still the right way to play it. If you like being a tank and just being very careful and not dying because you always have the shield up at all times, or anyway, just using a shield more than you should, if you're having fun, it's still the right way of playing the game. Or is it? My answer is maybe. Now, you see, I come from a background of traditional role-playing games. I'm not talking about action role-playing games, I'm talking about stuff like Fallout, as you probably know, Fallout 1, or Arcanum, or, I don't know, Baldur's Gate, stuff like that. And in those games, it's actually very simple to play the game wrong. Baldur's Gate is a good example of that, where, especially Baldur's Gate 2, where if you don't have a spellcaster and simply don't have any scrolls or anything in your party, you're gonna play the game wrong. You're gonna have such a hard time, and it's actually gonna be impossible to do some battles with a normal party without a spellcaster. So, because the game kind of bottlenecks you, forces you into that sort of play, RPGs are very much like that, and Baldur's Gate is very much like that. It forces you into a sort of gameplay mechanic that it doesn't actually need from the sort of gameplay mechanics that exist in the game, but it does, because of level design, enemy design, and all that. So if you're not playing with a mage, Baldur's Gate 2, you're gonna be playing the game wrong. And it's not really your fault. It's the designer's fault, really, if it doesn't tell you right away or through whatever, through hints, outright, pop-ups, whatever, that you should have a spellcaster, or if he doesn't force you to have a spellcaster in a party, then it's not going to be really your fault. So, what H. Bomber Guy came up, a notion that he came up with, or at least a name for a notion that he came up with, is he calls it play conditioning. And what that is, in simple terms, is basically how the game shows you the way that is best to play the game. So Bloodborne does that, in his opinion, which is, it shows you that being agile, dodging a bunch, being aggressive in certain situations is the right way to play the game. It is the most fun for Bloodborne. And he calls it play conditioning. Now this term play conditioning, he says he's never seen it referenced, and I have looked up, I've been trying to figure out if there's any reference to it anywhere in terms of game design. There's a few things regarding other stuff, like sports and all that, but I think that's more to do with strategy, and it's actually, I think it's a misused term. It's strategy in sports, like soccer and stuff like that. But in gameplay design and in game design, I have never seen that. And it took me a long while to really understand what that was. For a long while, I saw the video and I saw him mention play conditioning, which is, as I said, just the game try to orient you towards the right way of using its mechanics. For a long while I thought that, yeah, that's a novel term and that's something that I didn't see before. But then I realized that it's actually not novel. It's something that's not used for, I'm sure, many reasons, but it's something that's not taken into consideration a lot of the time, but it's not a novel term. What play conditioning is, and bear in mind that what he uses it for is for the player, so the player can discover, and this is a very important term, discover the gameplay mechanics that are best suited for the game. Because the game can have stealth, and you can use stealth throughout the whole game. That's not the best way of doing it for most games, unless you're playing a stealth game, an outright stealth game. But the game can have blocking, like Dark Souls, and you can use that blocking for the whole game, even though that's not the best way of doing everything. Or it can have spellcasting or whatever. What he uses play conditioning for is for the player's discovery of the gameplay mechanics. And that has a very common name that is used a lot in design. Discoverability. It's also used somewhere else in other places, but discoverability is what play conditioning is. And it's more often used in software development, software design, website development and design. And I come from that sort of background, so I kind of have that perspective a little bit better, and as to what works and what doesn't, and especially how it actually can be implemented and by who it can be implemented. So discoverability is really what it is. So if a game wants the player to play the game right, it needs to allow the player to discover the correct gameplay mechanics in an easy way. It needs to point the player to the right way of playing the game in as easy a way as possible. And I feel that Dark Souls 1 doesn't do that as well as Bloodborne from what I've seen. I have not played Bloodborne, I don't have a PlayStation, so I can play, but I am playing Dark Souls 2, and I'm playing it with a two-hander, sort of very agile kind of guy, and I'm really having a lot of fun. Anyway, I went in long detail in the stream just talking about what Dark Souls is. I'm gonna wait until I finish Dark Souls to give my final verdict. I'm probably gonna make another video about that, like this one, but I feel that what he's talking about is simple discoverability. Now, discoverability, the first time I saw that term was when I was, for a long time, I was really involved in with the community for Firefox, and I was following the development of new designs and all that. This is back in Firefox 4.0 time, so when they changed, it's very far away, it's like 10 years ago already, but they were discussing things about discoverability, and you might not know, for example, and now that you're here, let me tell you that if you middle click, and the middle click is this, you see the scroll here, I think, yeah, you can, sorry, you can see the scroll over here. If you click on the scroll, this is a middle click. There's some old mouses actually had a middle button, and then the scroll was put in the middle of the button, and it was a little bit weird, but yes, this is what's called middle click. And if you middle click on a link, it opens the link in a new tab. Go ahead and try it right now. Just right now. You can watch the video. It's not going to stop. I'm going to be on the background because the new tab opens on the foreground. But it's a shortcut. You don't need to right-click, and you don't need to select open a new tab or open a new window. And this is a thing that a lot of people don't know. And the reason why they don't know this is because it's actually hard to discover. It's not intuitive. Well, once you start using it, it is intuitive. It's something that I do every day. It's just normal for me. But if you don't know it, why are you going to middle click even in a link? Another use for the middle click that's also pretty not discoverable is that you can middle click in not a link, and it allows you to scroll the page in a weird way. And it's actually kind of confusing at the beginning. Now, the only way for you to find these things, and there's parallels to this in video games as well, the only way to find these things is by mistake. And it's in actual fact that was how I did it. I found these things by mistake. But once I found it, a lot of us have this mindset, I certainly do, which is I find something interesting. Oh, look at that. Something weird happened. But this can be used this way. And I found that, and I latched onto that. And while the discoverability of that function was not good, it allowed me to still use it because it was a very good function. So the same happens in video games. If you can upgrade your weapon, let's put it like that. If it's a shooter and you need to upgrade a weapon to progress, but the game doesn't hint you in the right direction, it doesn't point you in the right direction, either through a pop-up or through a dialogue that somebody's gonna have with you or something like that, you're not gonna find that you can upgrade your weapon unless you read a manual, which is something that, you know, gamers tend to do less and less, including myself. I once was a very big fan of reading manuals, but not anymore. Not anymore simply because of many reasons, but question for another day. But it's that sort of discoverability that needs to be implemented in video games. So I don't feel that it's right to call it play conditioning. I feel that that has other connotations that probably should be left aside, but still, I feel that if you want to give Dark Souls a try, this is the whole point of the video. If you want to give Dark Souls a try, definitely check out his video. I feel that it didn't hinder my discoverability of the game, let's put it like that. It didn't hinder my amazement at what Dark Souls is. It's a fantastic game, and I'm having an enormous amount of fun. And I plan to stream it completely on Twitch. So yeah, thank you for listening, and stay tuned for the next little bit. And now that the fancy part is done, my blazer is off, and let's get down to what I'm watching this week. Well, I've actually watched this video a while ago, well, a few weeks ago, but I've been rewatching it again, and it's a video by a channel called Mr. Caption. Some of you might know about it. It's called Gameplay versus Context as Art. And it's a very interesting video. I definitely recommend you check it out. And I've been listening to it again because there were a few questions raised there regarding the distinction between context and gameplay that I didn't quite agree at first. And then I've been reading a book called Fundamentals of Game Design by Eric something. I actually don't have it with me. Should. Fundamentals of Game Design by Ernest Adams. I got that book on PDF online, but I've been reading it, and it's well, while the game design approach is a little bit too constrictive to my taste, it still has very interesting ideas and very fundamental parts of game design. I feel that even if you don't necessarily agree with, you definitely should be aware of. So that's also a pretty interesting book if you want to check it out. I think it's freely available online. It's just the third search result is already a PDF. That's not where I got it, but still. Yeah, whatever. You can buy it if you want. Yeah, I've been watching that video again over and over as I do some of these videos, and I definitely recommend you check it out. Very interesting video. Also, very interesting channel, Mr. Caption. And as I do every week, I want to thank you very much for watching, for supporting me in my channel, in my Let's Plays, and all this sort of weekend updates that I do, and all that sort of stuff. Thank you very much for watching, for liking, for commenting, for subscribing, for following me on Twitch. I stream, as you probably might know, I stream every Tuesday, Thursdays, and Saturdays. I'm currently playing through New Vegas and Dark Souls. But I want to give out a very special thanks, as always, to those of you that go out of your way to support me monetarily over at Patreon. I got a link for you up there if you want to check out my campaign. I finally figured out how to upload all the videos that I record in each day to a separate channel for those of you that want to get early access to them. So I pre-record the Let's Play videos, so I have a little bit of a buffer. There's another reason why I do that, and one day I'm gonna make a sort of a making of and explain to you, if you're interested in that, why I pre-record and why it's actually, I think it's so important to pre-record and not just record the videos that are gonna go up on the next day. Not even from a practical sense, because I actually end up recording every day about 5 videos. So it's not actually a practical thing for me, even though it actually kind of is. Because, you know, we never know, I could be sick or something. But the fact of the matter is, I do pre-record a few things. So I have a bunch of Battle Brothers episodes pre-recorded. They're all up there on my Patreon. I have a bunch of Legend of Grimrock. I have a bunch of... I've actually finished playing Expeditions Viking. Fantastic game. So I have all the episode 74. It goes up to 74. I have a bunch of... Planescape already, Planescape, I always mispronounce that, already recorded. So I figured out how to do that, and by this week I will have basically a bunch of videos over there, and I'll be uploading videos every day. All the videos that I'm recording each day, they will be over at Patreon. So if you want to check it out, be sure to check out my Patreon link. So yeah, for those of you that are already supporting me, you are extremely generous. Thank you very much for supporting me. I hope you are enjoying the ride, and I do apologize that it took me so long to get these things correctly and just all that. But this week I have 2 new subscribers. Well, one of them is a comeback, I suppose, because he's been out on the army, and I don't know if he's just actually out of the country or not, but I hope everything is going well for him, and that's Adam Collider. Welcome back, buddy. I hope everything is going well. And of course, the other one is Eric Todd, and actually I switched the order that I have up there. Sorry about that, but Eric Todd, welcome on in to the RPG Army. Thank you for supporting me on Patreon. And the other ones, Rob Anybody, thank you very much. Robert Daffern, who has shown up, actually not for the first time, but has shown up on my screen, thank you very much. Paul Bible, Joshua A. Ennis, Michael Grayson, thank you very much. Christopher Chilton, thank you. Grigory Krasikov, Damar Larkin, and Andre Foral. Thank you very much for your support, and I hope that you are satisfied, even though I'm actually not having a little bit of trouble with the whole uploading of pre-recorded videos, but I will be sure to get that done this week, because I finally figured it out with my old workflow. So thank you very much. Do check my Patreon page if you want to support what I do here on the channel, and stay tuned for the last little bit. So this week's quote has got everything to do with what I was talking about before. And a little bit to do with what I was talking about before, if that makes any sense. There's multiple ways of approaching it. This week's quote is by Jeff Orkin, and he's a programmer and game researcher and stuff like that. He's basically a programmer more than anything, and he's worked as the AI lead for Fear, one of my favorite shooters of all time, to be honest. And the AI is brilliant. I've always regarded Fear as a fantastic AI experiment, basically. It's a very fun game, even though the level design is a little bit lacking, but it's a very interesting game. It's very old as well by now, but it looks very nice, so if you want to check it out, you probably can get it for very cheap, if not for free, because I think I got about 3 copies for free. So yeah, Jeff Orkin has a quote that goes like this: "Playtesting by people outside of the development team typically comes too late to have a major impact on the final product." And I understand where he's coming from, because I myself am a programmer, even though I don't actually program games. Well, I'm a web programmer. It's not really program, it's more scripting than anything. But I do work with programming languages and stuff like that, so I understand his perspective. What I was saying before about discoverability, I myself feel that as a programmer, I can't figure it out. When the client comes, so I develop websites, or my company develops websites, so the designer gives me the website to develop, I program it, I put stuff online, and I just do a little bit of design as well myself, because, you know, the designers tend to offload some of that work to the programmers, if the programmers can handle it. But the problem is when the client comes to us with something that actually changes the design, I feel, in a way that was not accounted for, I usually throw my arms up in the air and I'm like, oh my god, I'm gonna need to rewrite this whole thing. And I feel that I'm not alone in that. It's very easy as a programmer to fall into that trap. So what he's saying over here, Jeff, he's saying that when people outside of the company come in and just say, oh, this game is boring, for example, I wish I could, I don't know, have different weapons or something like that. What people say they want is usually not what they want, is what they like. So what they want is more to do with how they find out how to play the game properly. If the people that are playing the game think it's fun, all they have to do, and this is the job of the designer, is to actually show the people that are playtesting the game how to play the game. If they do that, if they let people test it but actually tell them how to play the game, that's not as effective. That's a problem of testing. It's actually if you try to orient the playtesters in the way you know how to play the game, you're gonna have a worse product. You need to let them find it for yourselves, because that way you can test that discoverability. And that's usually not done, or, you know, telling the playtesters how to play the game. That's usually not done by good developers anyway. So what you need to do is not actually rewrite the whole game. You don't need the playtesters to have a very big impact in the game if you know the game can be fun. What you need to do is you need to adjust your design, superficial design more often than not, to just tell the players through the game how to play it. So as a designer, I feel that's not intuitive at all. That's really hard to do. As a programmer, it's not intuitive at all. It's very hard to do. But as a designer, I feel that it's easier to see that way, to see the way where you can tell the player how to play your game. So I think it's important to play test early. I think it's important to get feedback from outside early, but it's also important to know that you don't need to rewrite everything if you know your game works. All you need to do is actually tell the player how the game works. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye. Also, excuse the stupid shirt. I like it. I think it's fun. Excuse the beard as well. I don't like it, but it's just... Bye.